PEG access budget. Article number 10 is the PEG access budget. As you know, we've had a discussion and disagreements on where and when those funds may or may not be required to go. So I honestly, I don't have a recommendation at this point. I could recommend a dollar appropriation. I'd like to work with them and make it work, but maybe we give them another month, another week or so, and come back to it the next time. But that's up to the board.
Counselor?
This has been a sort of a troublesome subject matter. You heard a lengthy statement from on behalf of DATV. I have been doing my best to be involved in responding to DATV and their counsel on this, but we're guided by the information provided to us by the Division of Local Services. And they've made it very clear to us that these so-called pre-enterprise reserve funds should come to the town in the form of a new enterprise fund to be established to receive those funds along with the current enterprise funds. We've received that guidance in no uncertain terms. I'm not sure what else we can say. I understand that they have their reasoning to believe that that those funds are exempt and not subject to receipt by the town. I don't know what else to say other than that we're following the guidance we're getting from the Department of Revenue on this.
Okay, so we've invested a lot of resources. We've got legal, we've got town management working through this. We've got Mass General Law that's come down with what should be happening.
Well, again, you know, there may be a dispute on the law. I don't doubt that. I mean, lawyers dispute all the time. And, you know, it may have to be resolved by a superior court. I can't say for certain. All I can do is, as I said, represent to you the information that we've received from what I think is to be a neutral source in all of this, and that's the Department of Revenue.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Selectman Kopsinski.
So, hearing from the attorney from DATV, there was a lot of "we believe," "we contend," and she mentioned on the website that it says the guidance in an email isn't law. And you're saying you have it under no certain terms. Is that the email that you're talking about, or is there something else out there?
No, there is an email, and I mean, I can read to you what was provided to us.
But doesn't the IGR, though, indicate?
And that's supported by what's called an informational guideline release. Those are periodic, very authoritative publications provided by Division of Local Services, which is part of DOR, to municipalities, council, and municipal officials on very discrete, you know, accounting type of mechanisms. So they have an informational guideline release that was already cited from 2016-102 that describes, you know, how it is that we account for the Educational Government Access Special Reserve Revenue Funds. And they should go into a enterprise fund. And the information we received, very simply, that the town needs to take the following steps. 1, revoke the Receipts Reserve Fund established under 44, Section 53, F and 3/4. That's the existing enterprise fund. Establish a new enterprise fund under 44, Section 53, F and a half. The town will then need to reclaim the funds currently being held by DATV. When received, they should be put into the newly established enterprise fund. Very simple instructions from DOR. We're attempting to follow those instructions.
And the enterprise fund has already been established.
Attorney Julie, can I just clarify one thing? There was also mention that some communities don't have an enterprise fund, and that is true. Under the IGR, you're allowed two ways of creating this fund. One is an enterprise fund, and one is a special revenue fund. You have to create either or. The accounting is a little different, but the mechanism is pretty much the same. The accounting is, one is you can't estimate your receipts, whereas the other one with special revenue, you have to have the receipts in hand in order to appropriate. That's the difference between the two, the difference in the enterprise fund and a special revenue. But a community who has a PEG access has to have one or the other.
And it is very possible that if we don't meet the requirements as they've indicated, and they've pretty much ordered us to, they will hold up our tax rate in November. I mean, I can't guarantee that, but that's an option for them, that if we don't abide by their requirements, they could hold up our tax rate. It might not be, like, I don't understand why it's just not, why it's such a problem. It doesn't make sense.
Okay. Further discussion from the board?
I'd like to ask a couple of questions. I don't see anything in the contract talking about this activity.
The IGR supersedes any contracts.
So
We
how
have the
did
same
IGR
situation with other,
How did the IGR get involved? We just recently made this
it's
contract.
an informational guideline release which they issue for 351 municipalities. It's not
So
just
they issued
Drake.
it and then you just act upon?
Correct. So
Okay.
if they give us a, you know, for example, stormwater, I'll use that as an example. We were required to set up an enterprise fund, which we did, and that was all governed by the Department of Revenue through an IGR. It's not unusual. Every penny that comes in this building that's deposited is impacted by an IGR. It's just the process.
I guess my second question is, when you read the contract, I feel like we're using this warrant article in the budget process to do whatever you're trying to do with this money.
We're not trying to do anything with money other than put it in the enterprise fund and it will fall to retained earnings. That's it. There's nothing else happening here.
Right.
We've been trying to get this done for 2 years. This is the only option we have at this point. I do not want to put our tax rate in jeopardy. We need them to cooperate. I don't understand why they won't.
As far as the warrant article goes, I feel like putting a dollar budget is unacceptable because the language here says that they provide us a budget by February 28th, and then it gives us a payment schedule in it as it's our obligation to pay them as the issuing authority, and that's the language that I read in this contract.
If the board would like to do that, that's fine.
So why wouldn't you have put this warrant article up with the budget that they submitted?
What warrant article?
The one that is setting their budget,
It's the same article.
but there's no money associated with this article?
yeah.
Why didn't you put in the dollars that
Because
they?
we need the funds to be deposited into the enterprise fund.
So the money that they
Money, the
request,
assumption is that because if we put $1 on there, or whatever the number might be,
Mm-hmm.
they have what they need in their bank to fund the fiscal year '24 budget.
but the contract we recently signed with them says we're paying from the money coming into us.
Right, but the money's
In
not
the-
here, so we can't.
You're not
pay it.
getting the money from Comcast?
We're not getting the, no, we are. We're getting that, but they have refused to turn over the reserve.
But I'm not talking about the reserve. The money that comes in from Comcast per the contract that we spent a lot of time
Yes.
designing. That money comes in. Does that cover the budget that they've?
Sure,
So why aren't we following the contract and figuring this other
because
stuff
we're not
out
meeting the
separate?
legal guidelines that we've been trying
But
to
that's
meet
separate
for
than the
2
budget.
years. This has
That-
been going on for 2 years.
But we never talked about it before when we even did the contract. And
Because
this
it's
is
not,
a,
it hasn't got to a point where the Board of Selectmen have to get involved, and now you do.
but through the contract, we're collecting enough money to pay for their budget. I feel like you're holding hostage. It's two separate things to me.
We are. I don't doubt that,
Okay,
I have no qualms with that at all.
okay. Well, I'm
It's
not
a-
interested.
It's a tool for us to get what we need. And if
And
you
I don't
don't
think the
agree,
budget-
then you don't agree.
I don't agree because
Okay.
it says in here what our obligations are, and we'll be out of compliance and a clear violation of this contract if we don't give them the proper budget that we're getting funding for.
Town council can opine on that.
I understand the idea of separating the two issues. There is, as I had been focused on earlier, what we believe to be the legal obligation to turn over those reserves. Now, how you achieve that, I suppose, is a subject of debate.
That would require a vote of this board to allow that to happen.
The board can choose to fund the budget in full, and I do not have any issues with that. I just think it's important that the town understand that this money is sitting in an account that's not controlled by the town, and it's town funds. That's it. If you want to approve a budget, a certain number for their budget, yes, we will do what we got to do. But this, at some point, it has to work. It's not working.
So if we take that money, that's not tax money, it's money that comes from subscribers.
Yep.
So I don't understand why we think we own it, because
We don't, the IGR is very clear. It's the Department of Revenue. We're not trying to, it's
but
not
even
the
if we,
town.
so we take it, but then we're still getting the money, enough money to cover their budget. So isn't that money always just going to sit there?
No, not
You still have to
necessarily.
put that
Not
money that
necessarily.
Comcast
And one of
sends
the
you.
reasons I say that is because the viewership is really declining because of streaming.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that's gonna have, what impact that will have on the budget as a whole. So building the retained earnings, which is where that money will go, will certainly help them with that. And it would be invested, it's not,
I just think it's two separate processes.
I don't disagree, but the first process hasn't worked, and it's not going to work. So maybe we're gonna have to go to Superior Court.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Selectman Horczynski.
I don't like the language of, holding hostage, political retribution, which I have seen on this board relative to Drake TV. But, I think Heather's suggestion, the fact of the matter is that the money is coming in to fund their budget for next year, and there is certainly a conflict here between the lawyers on how this should all be done. Of course, we think we're right, of course, they think that they're right. So why don't we just fund them for this year and get the lawyers together and go to Superior Court and ask for a summary judgment and let the judge decide what the law says. I don't think that you should hold their budget hostage, your words, Ann, because they do such a great job at DATV. We have one of the best cable access television programs anywhere I've seen, and I don't like the language of holding hostage and political
Well, I believe-
retribution. Let's just do what you want to do. Let's pay for their fiscal year coming, and let's take it to Superior Court and ask for summary judgment. That's what these two lawyers are here for. We're lay people. You're
okay
not
with that.
supposed to make legal
That's fine.
decisions that I don't know enough about.
I think that this is definitely a conversation that needs to continue between council. We've invested a lot of time. I don't think this is the forum for this conversation to continue.
That being said, I'm open to a motion to,
So, just so that everybody knows what
What's-
the budget they're looking for, $496,925.
I'll make the motion that we fund it for this fiscal year.
A second.
And do what you may, or do what you have to resolve the issue within the next year.
and I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Victor, but the Department of Revenue is the entity that recommended that we do a $1 budget. Just so you know that.
I mean,
Okay, so hold on, we have a motion and a second, but we've got discussion here, so.
My computer's
Please.
restarting.
Speak, Madam Chair?
Yes, Selectman
I mean,
Dorado.
we pay our attorney to do what we're supposed to do. I mean, he researches it, maybe they see a different angle, but he's still our attorney. And I have to go by what our attorney tells us to do. And he's telling us right now that that's what he got back and that's what he was told to do. So, what their attorneys say means nothing to me. I have to go by what my attorney tells me to do.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, Selectman Kopsinski.
I have not read the contract. It was signed before I was a member of the board, but I would like to read it, and I am concerned of being found a breach of contract. There's a lot of unanswered legal questions here between the two attorneys. but I don't think it's fair to do a $1 lump, budget at this point. I don't think we should give up the argument. I still think we should pursue it, but I think at this point, it would be unfair to the town to not fund it.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to fund the budget for this
Madam Chair,
fiscal.
if I could just say one more thing. I think by funding the budget, it puts our best foot forward as well. Then we can be sure that there isn't any political retribution, if this is done in a legal setting, then, there's no animosity. It's just a legal question that we would like to have answered by the courts. And, that's what we're doing here. We're running the business for the town, and I really think that, if we vote to fund this for the fiscal year, I think that brings a lot of the tension down, and it also shows that we are trying to cooperate, and, I'll be happy with whatever the judge's decision is.
That's fine.
Madam Chair, it's not political retribution if the DOR is telling us this is what we're supposed to be doing, and this is what our attorney is supposed to be telling us we're supposed to be doing. So, I mean, I take a little bit of exception. I know they pointed, it was misstatements made, but about one member of this board, which I'm sure they meant me, but that's okay. But I have nothing to do with DOR or what our attorney's decisions are. So,
I agree that if we're getting the precedent come down to us from the DOR, then that's what we should be following. If that's what they're saying should be done, then that's what should be done.
Madam Chair, just to remind, Mr. Duraco, you are the person that they're talking about, Joe, and you have said some very...
really, Mr.
Okay, guys.
Well, no, I'm
Let's
just
stick-
saying, you've said some very derogatory things about DATV, and that's gonna come out when they sue us. I hope you're ready for that.
Okay.
Whatever.
That's enough. We have a motion and a second to fund the budget for this year. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
No.
No. Motion passes 3-2.